spoil the movie. People will see it tonight. But in a Final Reckoning, there is an unbelievable scene of the one with the submarine that I really don't know how you do it. But it's probably one of the biggest scenes I've ever seen on screen. But you never forget to put Tom at the center of the screen. I mean, literally, I think it's one shot out of three that is recentered, that the character is centered, that we must not forget that Ethan Hurt is risking his life. How do you get that? I mean, is it written, or is it during the editing process? Is it something that is always on your mind and on your mind too, Tom?
You ask an excellent question, and the answer is yes and no to all of the above.
I'm going to need a little more.
With what you will see tonight, with the aerial sequence, with the underwater sequence, what we have learned from the helicopter sequence in Fallout, from sequences in Top Gun Maverick, going all the way back to Edge of Tomorrow, the exosuits in Edge of Tomorrow. When you design something that ambitious, you come up with a plan. You prepare meticulously, you pat yourself on the back, and then physics hits you square in the face. And we had learned enough. Everything that you're seeing that Tom and I do is taking everything we learned from the last film and applying it to this one. And at the end of every film, between the last note of music and the credits rolling, Tom will lean over to me at the first premiere and say, "We can do better." And only in one instance, in the instance of Dead Reckoning, we were halfway through Final Reckoning, he leaned over to say it, and I went, "We already did." The submarine is its own ecosystem. The minute you're talking about, and you won't see it in the film, remember that when you're watching Tom inside this semi-submerged, rotating room inside of a submarine, that is housed inside a 60-foot diameter, 1,000-ton, 360-degree rotating, fully submersible steel gimbal in an 8.5 million-liter tank. And he's inside it. And what you're watching is us testing it. Because there is no way to test that thing. There's no model, we built a model, and we put a little plastic figure and a bunch of torpedoes in it, and rotated it once, and they smashed the little plastic figure.
Okay. That's terrible.
Let's talk about safety cables.
Yes.
We knew, however, that we kept telling everyone around us, they kept saying, they kept looking at, we pre-visualized the sequence in a lot of detail, and we kept having to remind people, this is an idea.
I would say that's a cartoon.
This is a cartoon. This is not what will happen. Be ready for anything. And when you watch Fellini's 8.5, and not to compare myself to him in any way, shape, or form, but when you watch Marcello Mastroianni coming to set every day and watching the rocket ship be built, that gimbal was being built behind my trailer over 2.5 years while we were making Dead Reckoning, while we were trying to figure out the train sequence in that movie, knowing full well that we did not know what would happen when we turned that thing on. So everything that you're watching on screen, we didn't give ourselves more time. When the gimbal was ready, we went in with nothing inside it except the one set. We rotated it one time. We're shocked to discover nothing we thought about physically had been anticipated, and then said, what do we do with this environment? That's the sequence you're going to watch tonight with Tom Cruise at the center of it.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And you have to act in it.
Yeah, and but that's movies too. As we're looking at things in the origin of cinema, it was, here's the physics, what can we do, what story can we tell, how can we invest an audience in this, and where do we put the camera, and what's going to be the most entertaining. We try to anticipate what things are. It's not like we haven't done, I've been doing underwater sequences since Legend. And then we just keep going and going and going and pushing and trying to improve in every area as best we can. And the next films we'll do, we're going to learn from this and apply it to the next and the next and the next.
There's another particular challenge in shooting these sequences. Were I shooting a sequence like this with anyone other than Tom Cruise, well, first of all, I probably wouldn't have the resources to shoot the sequence. Second, my job would be to hide the fact that it's not the actor doing those things. I would be doing everything I could to shoot around a stuntman. I'd have some face replacement, and I might put the real actor in one or two shots to connect you to that character. The challenge of shooting a sequence with Tom is constantly reminding them that it is the actor doing it. That determines every camera position, every camera rig, and the camera positions and the camera rigs, both in the submarine. Just keep in mind, when you set a camera, then you turn the set on and the set is rotating. The camera won't be where you put it when Tom gets there. It was a very talented group of people who had to anticipate where to put the camera so that it was always collecting Tom. That in and of itself is a level of engineering that you can't imagine. Now put it on the wing of a biplane. Now put Tom on the wing of the biplane with that camera in between the wings of the biplane. Now, when we started designing this sequence, we went to wing walkers who do this professionally. And they said, what do you want to do? And Tom said, I want to be 0G in between the wings of the plane. And these people who do this for a living and are part of a decades-long tradition said, no, you're not going to do that. And Tom said, thank you for your time. And we went on to some other people. And you'll see what the wing walkers said we couldn't do. But also, it's finding the camera positions and all of the engineering. It represents the work of thousands of hours of work of many people, craftsmen, pilots, engineers.
And decades of work to be able to develop these things, which is studying these aerial sequences. You know, I fly jets, I fly aerobatic airplanes, helicopters, and then how do we apply and understanding those physics when we're pulling this in or parachuting and kind of saying, okay, I understand enough about this. I really do believe we can do it.
Almost enough.
Yes, but we discover.
Yes.
We discover as we go on, but it is years of development, and it's just also decades of just learning and applying and be willing to discover and find out ultimately what you have a plan, and then when the plan changes, we look at it not as a disruption, but as an opportunity. You always have to look at things as filmmakers and go, okay, this is supposed to be a sunny day, it's raining, what do we do? Or the camera's broken, we can't get that shot, let's create something more interesting. And look at that as an opportunity and not like all my ideas are shattered. And, you know, he was talking about Edge of Tomorrow, we have the heavy suit. It was never supposed to be like that, but then I worked with the suit, say, okay, what is the design of this? What can we do with motion? How can we move these things with story and character and make it story and character, make it something that works for it? And more times than not, the stories that we hear in movies are things that have gone wrong or our favorite moments or things that we've discovered. And as opposed to looking at it and going on those moments, going, this is a problem, we just go, no, let's look at this as an opportunity and let's embrace it together. So that's really what you have to do when you're making movies, telling stories.
And most critically, none of that amounts to anything without emotion, which has become something over the course of the 4 missions that we've done together. A more and more important part of the story and the storytelling is bringing in more and more emotional arcs and more emotional life to those characters, and that's why these movies have expanded, not so much because the action sequence has gotten bigger, but the tapestry of those characters has expanded.
Well, there's another thing that's becoming bigger and bigger is the stunts. I mean, they are from movies to movies crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier. And Chris, has it ever happened to you that Tom comes to you and say, I want to do these stunts and I want to do this, and you would say to him, are you out of your mind? Did that ever happen?
The craziest stunt in this movie, and there are many, and when you see it tonight, you'll know exactly the stunt that I'm talking about. It's Tom's towards the very, very end of the film, was the result of my foolishly showing Tom a TikTok video, thinking he'd simply be amused by it. And he said, I could do that. And I said, no, you can't. And he said, yes. And then we went about developing the process to do it. I'm often asked, does Tom suggest something that I say no? No. Do I regret suggesting many things to Tom? Yes. in the midst of those sequences, when he's on the wing of the plane, the fun of our back and forth is we start all of these movies with each asking the other, what do you want to do with this one? And I knew I had a submarine sequence because of where the last movie left off, and Tom wanted to do a wing walking sequence. And it's in the midst of those sequences, when you're being utterly crushed by your ambitions, that the one whose idea it wasn't would turn to the one whose idea it was and say, you wanted this. This was your idea.
You wanted this. It's crushing me.
Yes. Our ideas come back to teach us a lesson or two.
Tom, last time we spoke about stunts, you said that fear was an important part for you because it keeps you awake and makes you want to be as ready as possible for a stunt. But the question for both of you, the fear must be here first for your life because it's risky, for the health of your actor and all the other stuntmen. How does that help, or how does that kind of put a brake on your ambition, the fear itself, the danger that you could have in making a scene as crazy as a biplane as this one?
For him or me? Oh. I mean, here's the thing. In life, I've always felt, I don't mind kind of encountering the unknown, and I like the feeling. It's just an emotion for me, and it's something that is not paralyzing. It doesn't bother me. I enjoy it. Any endeavor in life, people can be afraid to do something, and I'm like, okay, I don't mind kind of confronting it and going in and having, doing that. I wanted an interesting life that's very dynamic and learn things. I'm always learning something. Before you know it, the unknown, people can be quite frightened about an unknown, and I never have been. I'm curious about the unknown, or what people perceive to be unknown. I want to know. So that's how I feel about a stunt or life or entering into a movie. People can be paralyzed by making decisions, and I'm someone who's always, since I was a little kid, I make a decision and I go and I do things, approach it methodically, but I want to know and I want to experience, and that's in making movies, that's producing movies. There's all kinds of reasons why not to do something in life, and people can come up with a million evaluations and invalidations, and I tell every single person, it's better to have done it and tried than never to just sit here and wish you had or thought about it. So when you're making movies, when you're out there creating, you all just keep creating. Like, don't ask permission to do it. Just do it. So don't wait till everything's perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. Movies aren't perfect. People aren't perfect. Life isn't perfect, but you want to go at it, and it's better to do it. And better to do it and go, oh, I made mistakes, and then learn from those mistakes and go out and do it again. And do it again and again and again. And I can't tell you how important that is, and the things that we talk about, that I talk about with my crew, with artists. It's better to do it than not, and just keep creating. So how do I feel about fear? I'm like, oh, that's exciting. Get the adrenaline going. I don't. I try to be as know before I go as much as I can. I'll write a goal, and then I'll write a list down of what it takes to attain that goal, and then you kind of learn, and you go up and down that list of, I got to learn how to fly a helicopter, or I better learn this lens, or I better understand that culture better, or that geography, and then you just keep attacking it. And so that's what I do. That's also something that I admire about him. He's someone who is constantly learning, constantly pushing himself. And, that's really the way I do it. And I wish that for everyone. And don't be afraid. Or people say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should be careful. I'm like, actually be competent, be capable, strive towards being capable in things, and look for knowledge that you can apply. That is actually, when you apply it, does it get you the results that you want? And I mean that in every field, whether it's understanding a lens, a camera, the tools of your craft in cinema. And it's a constant study. It's not like we've arrived and I know this lens. It's like, okay, there's a new story. How do we tell that story? What information, and is it, there's just constant learning. So that's how I feel about it.
I probably wasn't able to articulate it until this particularly making the aerial sequence, which was early on in production. Our safety procedures involved a briefing every morning, and we would go through all of the things we were going to do on a specific flight. You'll see with this aerial sequence, we flew over 4,000 sorties. That's 4,000 separate flights. And what I realized very early on, I learned from the pilots that accidents happen because of an accumulation of distractions. Multiple people are distracted, often by things in their personal life or problems they're having at work. And what I realized as I started to look at it the way pilots look at it, that I had to be, in an overview, even more clear-headed than that. And I simply could not allow fear, stress, anxiety, pressure to enter into it. It did not matter how much time there was in the day. It did not matter what was going wrong. It did not matter what the schedule was, or that we weren't going to make our day. Fear is a wasted emotion. Stress is a wasted emotion. Anger is a wasted emotion. And in situations like this, they can get somebody killed. So it was simply a luxury you didn't have. After you've done it, and you go home, you can be all stressed out all you want. And what happens is, Tom and I are very often sitting in the editing room, watching what it is we've done and said, somebody should have stopped this thing. Look, did they actually let us do this? And then we become numb to it. So we were watching the submarine and thinking, we didn't get it. We really didn't. It just wasn't working for us. And then people would come in and sit there watching it with fresh eyes, and we saw people holding their chests, and people had to stand up and leave the room, and we thought,
well, I got that guy.
Did something right. Yeah. You tend to, that is the price of it is, those are the sequences that are, Tom puts it a very good way. You have, as a filmmaker, you have to be the audience. You have to be able to put yourself in the audience's position. I know no actor on earth who is better at being the audience while performing and able to both be totally present in that three-dimensional space with another actor and at the same time be looking at the scene. And I'll often tell him, hey, you want to watch that one on playback? And he's like, I did it, I was there. He doesn't need to see it. He's also so acutely aware of the frame. It doesn't matter where he is on set. If you're looking at him on the monitor here and you ask him, where's the bottom of the frame? He looks at the focal length of the lens, and on the monitor he goes like this, right along the bottom of the monitor. He's so connected and so acutely aware and so experienced and in tune with that it's a genuine luxury. You have somebody who is representing the audience there on set with you. It's beyond valuable.
Thank you.
That's very true.
I've seen the movies this weekend, and I was like, of course, I was on the edge of my seat, like everybody will be tonight. But I was also like,
You all coming tonight? Oh, great. That's cool. That's nice. Hey, we're gonna have fun tonight. I can't wait.
But there's something else. I mean, I realized also, I'm watching a lot of movies, but Mission Impossible, it's 30 years of my life, 30 years of your life, 20 years of yours. So I wonder why all these scenes that we find in the film. The film talks about that. The film talks about time passing. The film talks about the consequences of stuff we made 30 years ago. Of course, it's an action movie. Of course, it's Mission Impossible. But it's also the meaning of it. And it talks also about the fact that we have to keep the fight, to keep fighting the machine, as Ethan Hunt is doing literally in this one. And it's kind of a sum up of 30 years of our lives. Do you realize that? Was it something that you were thinking about, probably not doing it because you were kind of very busy, but writing it and working on it? Is it what's your take on this, the feelings that we have as audience member, if you're as old as me? This movie is a part of our life.
Wait, is that for me?
Oh. For you both.
No, listen, it is that journey, and it is that journey, and our lives are the sum of our choices, and these are things that we talk about, and I think that McHugh was working with him, he's got a perspective on the franchise that was very unique in the story that he wanted to tell. I was like, this is very unique, and his ability to be able to pull those moments out and create this kind of emotional story. I don't know, it's just, I was really excited, and his ideas were extraordinary. And yeah, it's 30 years. First film I ever produced officially, and it means a lot to me. It means a lot to me in so many ways. The journey that we've taken, what I've learned about life in doing it, and my ambitions, just even as a kid, to be able to travel to different cultures and work within those cultures and look at those spaces and places and people, and not just visit them, but sweat together as we're creating. You really get to know someone when you're working with them. You really get to understand what we have in common and the human experience, and all those things. My whole life has interested me above all, and being able to tell these stories. So it's, means a lot. It means a lot to me. And yeah, it's just even thinking that I'm here being able to do this at this time. That was a dream. It's not something that was planned. I hoped, I wanted that. Like, I was a kid thinking into the future. I'm someone who always kind of looks at things, if I'm making a movie or doing it, we think about, my gosh, what would it be like to be a Ken, or what would it be like, to have that moment, or decades from now. As we're making it, are the people is it gonna affect them? Are they gonna wanna watch this and be engaged with it the same way that I am with films that were done 30, 40, 50, 60 years before me? So I've just put everything into it, and it's joyous doing it. I can honestly say there's not a day that I didn't try. You go and do it the very best you can. So that's my answer.
Good answer. Somebody I have to acknowledge sitting in the audience is my writing partner, Eric Jemison. I'm sitting back there.
There's Jemison. Hey, Eric.
Gotta stand up, Eric.
Yeah, we gotta say there's Eddie Hamilton.
And Eddie Hamilton, our editor, sitting right next to him.
Yeah. And our incredible cast, where are they?
Incredible cast, where are you guys?
Are they here?
Anybody? Oh, they're probably out partying.
They're out partying. They're out during interviews.
Eric and I have been friends for, we've actually lost track of how long we've been friends for. My family and I were trying to figure that out today. And he is, any project that I'm working on, I call him, he calls me. We talk to each other for hours a day. We're essentially each other's psychologists. And Eric, early on in this process, and missions are very hard to write. They're very challenging, and a mission has a mind of its own, and it doesn't tell you where it wants to go. Eric was listening to, we were struggling to write the mission brief, Good Evening, Mr. Hunt, which is always one of the hardest things in the movie to do, because it's pure exposition that you're trying to make emotionally compelling. And Eric noted 3 very important things. 3 important words, actually 4 important words. One was choose, one was accept, and then there was good luck. And that he pointed out to me that this entire story, this entire franchise, is about choice and acceptance. I would go so far as to say the entire process of making films is about choice and acceptance. And that became incorporated into the DNA of the story, as did this concept of good luck, and the motif of good luck, which runs through the movie. Found it very interesting that going back to Bruce Geller's TV show, the idea of this secret government agency that would end every message with, should you choose to accept, empowering that person to do it. It wasn't an order. It was essentially, it was an offer. It was, if anything, it's a prayer. And then offering good luck felt like something completely human. The reason I'm getting emotional is because of how many times those concepts hit us in the face while we were making this movie during a global pandemic and 2 industry strikes, when it felt like the art form that we were making it for was facing extinction. And is here because of the efforts of this man. I was a fly on the wall for all of that, and I watched it happen firsthand.
It doesn't happen without you, my friend.
Thank you very much. They take your call a lot sooner than they take my call. I'm happy to be on speaker. And so that imbued this with a kind of humanity starting in Dead Reckoning. The notion of the mission briefs and what they became, culminating in the mission brief you'll see in this movie, where it was the first time where the mission brief itself became something more emotional than informational. And that, I have to say, started with a phone call in the middle of the night from Eric Jennerson. Thank you, Eric, for that.
Thank you, Eric.
Well, since I'm on the subject, what is the future of the franchise? Is there going to be a future to the franchise? I mean, everybody want to know, especially when you're going to see the movie tonight.
Just let us show the movie tonight. This is like 30 years culmination of this, and I think that it's, this is, I'd rather just people see it and enjoy, and we've had an amazing time doing it, and it's been a lot of fun, and just want you all to enjoy it. Enjoy this and know everything is, the culmination has come to this moment right now, and it's been a lot of fun.
Tom, I'm sorry, I'm going to say nice things about you. Chris, we know from all his movies that Tom is a very, of course, talented actor, but a diverse actor, that he can do a lot of things, that he did a lot of things, whatever the movies are, whatever the directors were. But you're the first one in the Mission Impossible and in the Reachers to use all these palettes. Is giving kind of every aspect of your talent you're giving to Chris. How did you manage to get everything from Tom in your movies? I mean, not just the action hero, not just the moving guy, not just but everything. I mean, you'll see tonight again in mostly the first part of the film. You'll see that.
How did you do that?
Just get out of his way. It's just very simple. Something you don't see, and I don't get an opportunity to talk about a lot, is the generosity of this actor. And I've worked on other movies. I've worked with other leading men. The structure of a Hollywood movie is that it's designed entirely around. It's all built around the protagonist, and everything else tends to fill the space that's left over. This is someone who spends most of his day on set with the camera pointed at the people around him. His skill, his ability, his incredible control of his instrument, which I will go to my grave saying, no matter how many awards he wins, he's very underrated as an actor. Much of what you're seeing, if you go back and watch Fallout, and you watch the scene between Tom and Julia at the end of the movie, where we're shooting in New Zealand, we were shooting in the winter, so it was low winter sun, and we were shooting in a valley, which meant the sun had to come from behind one mountain, and you had to finish shooting before it went behind the other mountain, which meant, because I don't think about these things when I pick a good-looking location, you had 5 hours of available light every day. And it was Michelle Monaghan, one of only a few days she had on set. It was a scene with her and Wes Bentley and Tom, and it's a very emotional scene for Ethan. And it's not just those two, but it's also the team. And Tom Cruise said, do everybody else. And I said, this is most important moment for you. He goes, look at me, my back is to a tent. We can shoot this in London. Do everybody else. And of course, we shot everyone else as the sun was creeping across the sky. And at the same time, we don't want to leave ourselves work to do back in London. When you go back and watch that film, I want you to watch it and know that Tom Cruise's entire performance was delivered in the last 8 minutes of available sunlight. I'll get in trouble for saying this. Tom Cruise's performance with Val Kilmer in Top Gun Maverick, his most emotional through line of that entire scene, one take. You're talking about an actor of incredible technical ability, but also incredible generosity. Making these movies is both extremely emotional and extremely technical. You have to hit very specific marks, how you blink, how you move, it's so obsessively precise because the communication is so global and so nonverbal. it's so highly attuned, and everybody is watching Tom, and they're learning from Tom how to make these movies and how to deliver that kind of performance. That's all emanating from him to all the people around him. It's the generosity of Tom as to why all of that is working. And it's again something I feel he does not nearly get enough credit for. Another thing I would say, when you watch Tom tonight, there's a moment where he's in an airplane, he's in a biplane, completely alone. He's at the controls, and his biplane suffers some damage. Spoiler, there's tension in this scene. And there's a moment where the camera's in profile, and Tom Cruise looks over at the damaged strut of his biplane, and the camera throws focus. And it's this beautiful backlit shot, and there's sun, and you see this vibrating strut. And Tom turns back, and the camera racks focus to Tom. I want you to remember, there's no crew with Tom in an airplane at 10,000 feet above Africa. Tom is lighting the shot by how he's positioning the plane in its relationship to the sun, and he's operating focus just off camera. He is the crew in every single shot you're seeing in which he is alone. And nobody tells you this stuff. He's never on the behind the scenes. Tom's like, stop doing that. I'm like, no, I'm going to tell everybody.
But there's a lot of briefing beforehand. Where do you want the light, McHugh? How do you want, what are the clouds like? Are you happy with the background?
Yes, of course. And then, of course, when I'm saying you're happy with the background is clouds. It's not like we can scout that location and go, remember the cloud we saw yesterday? Go to that cloud. Tom is up there, and I'm talking to Tom on a radio where he really can barely hear me, and he's flying in an open cockpit. The communication it's another thing to remember when you see Tom on the wing of the plane. The only way to communicate with Tom on the wing of the plane is through hand signals. He has no radio, which means I have to fly up next to Tom in my helicopter. And Tom can't see me unless I open the door and step out onto the skid, with my first AD, Mary Boulding, reminding me to leave my seatbelt on. And I'm doing hand signals to Tom, and now the thing to remember about this environment, this is all fun stuff you're getting that most audiences don't. When you leave the cockpit of the plane, it's like stepping onto the surface of another planet. The wind is hitting you in excess of 140 miles an hour coming off of the propeller. The molecules of the air are so dispersed, you're breathing, but only physically. You're not actually getting oxygen. And Mary Boulding is sitting next to me, and she's got a stopwatch. And when Tom climbs out of the cockpit, I'll say, start the clock. And every minute, Mary Boulding says, 1 minute on the wing. And Tom is going through his performance, 2 minutes on the wing. Tom has 12 minutes. We know this from experimentation, that at about 12 minutes, the fatigue of being blasted by this wind is breaking his entire body down to the point where it's literally like 2 hours in the gym. And Tom, being the perfectionist that he is, would get to about 12 minutes, and I would lean out the door of the helicopter and say, and Tom would go, 13 minutes on the way. If you've ever seen Rocky, there was a moment, more than one moment, where Tom had pushed himself to the point that he was so physically exhausted, he couldn't get back up off the wing. He was laying on the wing of the plane. His arms are hanging over the front of the wing. We could not tell if he was conscious or not, and we also knew that unless Tom did this, it was expressly agreed he was not in trouble and he could not cut. You can't do this when you're unconscious. So we're waiting to see if there's any indication if Tom is okay. This means I'm resting, and we're waiting to see this sign. And Tom is laying on the wing of the plane, and John remained in the plane so that the planes could have their full maneuverability. We didn't leave with a full tank of fuel. We left with a very light load of fuel so that the airplane could do the aerobatics it did, at which point John Romain says, I have 3 minutes of fuel. 22 minutes on the wing. This was a typical day shooting in Africa, and watching Tom at the point of physical exhaustion get himself, because by the way, the plane can't land if Tom's on the wing. I should have mentioned that. So when John Romain is saying 3 minutes, he's got 3 minutes to get up, but he's been on that wing for 20 minutes. And we watched Tom as he pulled himself up and stuck his head in the cockpit so that he could replenish the oxygen in his body and then climb up into the cockpit and bring the plane safely down to land. No one on earth can do that but Tom Cruise.
We're gonna have to wrap up. I want to conclude on one thing, and in the discussion, listening to you, we understand why you make such great movies. You love movies, you love making movies. Do you realize?
An audience.
Yeah,
That is what we like.
And you love cinema.
I love cinema, and I love watching movies with audiences, and I just also have to say with McHugh, the hand signals that we created, you are a true adventurer, my friend, and that's why do I love you? You are that way. You have that spirit. Thank you. And it's been an honor and a privilege to know you and to work with you.
Merci beaucoup, messieurs. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci au studio Paramount. Aussi, je voudrais qu'on applaudisse très fort.
Блин. Вот самые умные люди на первых рядах, везучие. Ну хотя он уже все.